around our success biology work, which is part of our community portfolio. Thank you. Sorry. If I seem a little distracted, it's because we are doing this in person, and I'm so glad to have real people in the room here. And it's really nice to have that kind of feedback, get to see your smiling faces. But we also have folks joining us on a webinar. So they're hearing me and seeing the slides, and I was just trying to make sure we were set up to do both. So if I seem a little distracted, that's why. And also just a word, I do not know what's going on with my left eye today. I either got sunscreen in it or I have some kind of allergy. So as passionate as I am about this subject, I'm really not crying during presentation. Just my eye waters occasionally, so I apologize for that. So I'm really glad you guys are here. I love getting to talk about what's going on in our community and the work that United Way is doing to make our community a better place. And as Maria said, we're going to focus for our talk today on our work in Success by 6, which, as you could probably guess, is really focusing on our youngest children in the community and how we're really working to give children a strong start. Let's see if I can do both of these at the same time. All right. So where does this desire to do this work come from, or what underlies all of this work? And really, it's our organizational belief that all children deserve an opportunity to become a contributing member of society. But we know that children have they're born into different situations, they experience different things depending on the neighborhoods they live in, the schools they go to, the families they're part of. But we think that every child in our region deserves an opportunity to live up to their potential, and we want to make sure that happens. And so we're doing a lot of work across a number of different focus areas to make that happen. And I just want to start with the big picture quickly so that you understand the full range of the work that United Way is embarking on or has embarked on in the community. And we work with a wide range of community partners. I'll talk about some of those as I go through this. We work with lots of community partners on an agenda that we work with community members to develop. We've looked at lots of data. We've done lots of research. We've talked to lots of people in the community about their aspirations, about what they see as needs and opportunities, and so have worked to develop an agenda that's got 4 big areas of focus. Income or financial stability for individuals and families, health, that includes physical and mental health, basic needs, which is really around making sure that people have access to emergency food and emergency shelter, and education. And in education, we talk about the whole range of ages, starting from birth all the way up through the teenage years. And so we divide those into 2 buckets. We talk about Success by 6, and that's the focus of today's talk. And then we also do work around kids who are school age. So with Success by 6, you can see our desired result there at the bottom of that slide. We're really working to make sure that all children enter school on track across a whole range of developmental aspects in terms of their health, their literacy, their social well-being, their emotional well-being, and their intellectual skills. We know that children have a whole range of areas in which they develop, and we want to make sure that they have the opportunity to do that. Just a note that we know that educational attainment is one of the single most critical predictors of your lifelong outcome. And so while we work in all of those areas, we actually organizationally put a lot of emphasis on education. So a large percentage of our organizational resources, the way we use volunteers, the kind of grant making that we do in the community really does focus on that education category. So just a little bit, and I apologize, I don't know everyone's background, so I may be preaching a little bit to the choir. So I apologize if that's the case. But just a little bit about why we focus on early childhood, why we know that time period is so important. Well, first off, 85 to 90% of a child's brain develops by the time they're 5, which I think is staggering. This wonderful window of opportunity for those of us who are older than 5. It's a little sobering. But it is this wonderful window of opportunity. And we also know there's been this great body of research done over the past, really I think it's come to the fore in the last 5 to 10 years, about how a child's brain actually develops. And they know now that the experiences that a child has in those early years actually shape the architecture of the brain. So it actually shapes how your brain cells connect to each other. And I have this quote that I want to read because I just think it's so fun. But what they say is that brain development is actually activity dependent. So the kinds of experiences you have fire your neural connections. And the ones that are firing end up fusing and creating those connections. And the ones that don't get used wither and die away. Some of that withering and dying away, that's pruning, that's completely normal, and the brain does that over time and needs to function more efficiently. But if you've got these pathways that you really do need to be functioning in order to read really well or be able to interact with other children in socially appropriate ways, and they don't get used, they're not going to have the strength and connectivity they need. So there's this great quote that says, neuroscientists sometimes say, cells that fire together wire together. So I like that a lot. So we know it's this great window of opportunity. We know what actually happens in and around a child, the experiences that they have make a real difference in the shaping of their brain, the physical architecture. And there's all this great research that shows that the experiences a child has, particularly if they're in a high-quality early care and education setting, can have a real impact on their development. And in fact, the research shows it's even more important for children who are coming from low-income families and face specific challenges around the stress of families dealing with poverty, that those kinds of programs make an even bigger difference. And even if you aren't particularly interested, which I know is not the case with this class, if you aren't particularly interested in those actual children and their families, it's actually good for us as a society, because investing in early childhood and quality early childhood experiences is a great return for us, because it means fewer children are going into special education, more children are graduating high school, more children are prepared to go on to college and become tax-paying citizens. So it's good for us overall, just from a financial perspective. The other reason we want to focus on, and we are focusing on early childhood, is that Connecticut has an achievement gap. I'm sure you've all heard about that. That's not news, unfortunately. It's been around a while. But we really do recognize that achievement gap is in part a preparation gap. So you have children showing up at kindergarten door with these differences, these disparities, already very present. And as great as we have, great as many of our teachers are, and as hard as people are working in most of our schools, if you start off at this kind of difference and you help everybody improve, you still end up like this. And we know, again, through research, that if kids don't have the reading skills they need by the end of kindergarten, that it's likely to translate into not having the reading skills they need by the end of third grade. And if they don't have those, then that trajectory for finishing high school is really damaged. So just to make the point, this graph shows how our region, the region of United Way Greater New Haven, stacks up in terms of kids' literacy skills when they enter kindergarten. So a couple of notes about this. This is an inventory that's done in the fall of the kindergarten year. It's done by kindergarten teachers. Most everyone hates it. It's very subjective. It is, however, the only assessment that is done across all school districts in the state on incoming kindergarten students. So it's certainly not perfect, but it's what we've got. This is just looking at the literacy portion. This particular assessment or inventory looks at a whole bunch of different kinds of areas of child development. We pulled out just the literacy portion, and this shows the percentage of children who are at the highest rating, so that they are ready. The highest rating on the inventory translates into being ready. And you can see we've got New Haven here on the left, multiple years, 2008 to 2012. We've got what we call our inner ring or inner region. That includes Hamden, East Haven, and West Haven. And you've got our outer ring, which includes all the other towns in our region. So that's Orange, Bethany, Woodbridge, North Branford, just a second. North Branford, Guilford, and Madison. And then you've got the state numbers. So you do see that overall things have improved some, although this past year was a dip for everybody. I haven't really seen explanations for that, so I don't know why. And you see that while improvements have been made, there is still a difference here between what's going on for kids in our urban core, New Haven, what's going on for kids in those inner ring suburbs that touch New Haven, and what's going on for kids in our outer ring suburbs. Andy?
Two questions. Is this both public and private school? Do you know?
Good question. It's reported to the State Department of Education. I've always made the assumption it's only public because they're the ones required to do those kinds of things. But I can check because I don't know for sure.
And the other thing, so are these assessments done by teachers or done? What I'm getting at is it done by sort of an independent assessor who has the same criteria across the board, or is it someone, or is it independent teacher who say, oh no, my kid is ready, and then they put those,
right. So I'm going to just repeat it because of this on the webinar. So the question is, who actually does the inventory? Is it a teacher or an outside evaluator? It's the teacher. So, I mean, as I said at the outset, there are all sorts of flaws with this, although actually, interestingly enough, last year, researchers at UConn did a study looking at whether these results were in any way predictive of what happens on CMPs in third grade, and they are. So even though this is So even though this is flawed, and like I said, everybody hates it, and the state is saying they're coming up with something new, it's what we have, and it does have predictive value. So we've got this gap that shows up already when kids come into kindergarten. And just a word about the achievement gap. So if that's what kids look like when they come into kindergarten, we know things about our achievement gap. It's the largest in the nation. We know that it goes across race and socioeconomic status, and in fact, in Connecticut, low-income students perform at a much lower level than non-low-income students in Connecticut, and in some cases, that's up to 3 grade levels behind. And this achievement gap disproportionately affects minority students in our state. I think the point to make here is just, and I think all of you recognize this, or you wouldn't be caring about this topic, is that really the achievement gap affects all of us, regardless of our race and regardless of our socioeconomic status personally, because it makes a big difference in the well-being of the state, aside from the moral issue of the fact that we're failing huge numbers of our children. So in terms of poverty, so we know low-income children are faring worse in our school system, having worse outcomes overall as a group. In terms of poverty in our region, 3 out of 5 young children in New Haven live in poverty, live at or near poverty. Let me just say a word about that. The poverty measure is set by the federal government. It's incredibly low, especially for a high-cost state like Connecticut. So there have been studies done in Connecticut to say, what does it really take to live, to be self-sufficient financially in Connecticut? It's about twice what the federal poverty level is. So when we calculate poverty or low income close to poverty, we include those families that are technically above that federal definition, but are still below what it actually takes to rent an apartment, to buy food for your family, pay for your car insurance and your gas, the things that you actually really need to survive in Connecticut. Big difference here. So it's 3 out of 5 young children in New Haven live out or near poverty. In the inner ring suburbs, again, East Haven, West Haven, Hampton, this is an average. It's 1 out of 3. That number's gone up quite a bit. Poverty is growing in our suburbs. And then outer ring suburbs is 1 out of 10. So very different experiences for children, where they live in our region. So what are we doing about it? Well, over the last 8 years, United Way, with the generosity of donors just like you guys, has been able to invest more than $2.2 million in local programs that have an early childhood focus. And we have a focus on these 3 strategies, and so we work with a range of partners around these 3 strategies. One is to try to make sure that more children, particularly children from low-income families, have access to early care and education. So we know from the research, early care and education makes a huge difference, but it's really expensive. So if no one has had a young child in a formal child care program lately, let me just tell you it costs more than sending your child to UConn. And there are no scholarships, very few scholarships, very few sliding scales. There is some public dollars put toward it, but only for preschool kids. So if you are a working parent and you need to put your infant or toddler into child care, there is virtually no support, financial support to help you do that. So we've had a commitment to try and make sure that there are really good programs that are available to children from low-income families to make them accessible. We've also worked hard to improve the quality of early care and education. So it's not just enough to be in early care and education. It has to be quality. And we know what quality care looks like. It's around the teacher relationship, it's around the way the teachers teach, it's around the structure in the classroom, and the ratios, all sorts, the curriculum, all sorts of factors go into making a program quality. And we know, again, from research that a high-quality program has a really big impact on kids. A mediocre and a low-quality program is actually detrimental. So you don't want kids in those kinds of settings. And then we've also done quite a bit of work to help parents feel more supported in the world's hardest job, with parenting, so that they feel like they have the knowledge and the skills and the support they need to support their child's development. So those are the three big strategies that we've been using actually since the inception of Success by Six, over the last 6 years. These are results just from this past year. So these are not cumulative. So let me move that one. Sorry. I wondered how that moved, and I hadn't even touched it yet. Yeah, that one too. So these are our results just from this past year. So approximately 1,200 children ages birth through 5 benefited from high-quality early care and education opportunities as a result of Success by Six. More than 250 teachers reported improvements in their practice. So they received professional development, coaching, different kinds of technical assistance to help them improve what they were doing in the classroom with young children. And over 1,000 parents benefited from learning more about child development and what they could do to support their child's learning. So I want to talk just a little bit about what's next. So we've had these great 8 years of Success by Six, and we have these kind of natural cycles to the work. And so we're coming up actually on the end of one of our cycles for Success by Six. And so we took, it was the same length as birthing a baby, about 9 months, to involve lots of community members and experts to talk about, so where should we go from here? Knowing what we know about what's going on in our community, the fact that there's still tremendous need, the fact that the state, even in a tough budget climate, is mostly maintaining its resources in early childhood, although it has a stronger focus on preschool-age children than on infants and toddlers right now in terms of where the money is going. What should United Way do in this next cycle or phase for Success by Six? And how can we make the biggest difference with the resources that we have? And so we are embarking on a slightly reformulated set of strategies for Success by Six. So they still fit within that big bucket I talked about. But we are starting something new, a new kind of training that's really focused on helping parents understand child development and understanding what's called parent-child attachment, so that relationship between parent and child, and how to make sure that's really strong and positive. Because we know that if you have strong early attachment, it's a wonderful protective factor in a child's life. So it enables a child, if they feel like they have a strong relationship with their primary caregiver, we use the term parent in this case to mean all sorts of primary caregivers, be grandmother, father, mom, someone else. If they have that strong attachment to that individual. It sets them up for being able to have lots of positive relationships in their life, and it gives them the ability to regulate their emotions, which is such a critical factor in being able to be successful later in life, both as a child and as an adult. And I think what's staggering to us is when we look, we don't have local data on this, but when we look nationally, the research shows that up to 40% of infants in our country are found insecurely attached, meaning they don't have that strong bond with their parent or primary caregiver. And that really sets them up to not have that strong foundation to build on. So, you know, you can do lots of great work around literacy and math and all the other academics, but if you don't have that strong social, emotional sense of well-being in young children, it's going to be hard to build on that. So we're starting a new effort with a range of partners. We're still working to identify those partners, where we're going to provide training so that they can work directly with parents to help parents use its evidence-based curriculum around how you can create stronger parent-child attachment. And the results on this in other parts of Connecticut and other parts of the country have been really amazing. So we're excited about that. And then we're continuing our emphasis around quality, because again, we know quality is what really makes the difference. It's not just any early child care setting, it has to be a quality setting. And so we're going to be continuing our work with programs that can some coaching and training with early care and education teachers, particularly around literacy and math. I know sometimes people say, how are we going to do literacy and math with little kids? Don't think of flashcards. Don't think of dittos. There are these wonderful ways to expose children to those early concepts that get them excited about learning and gives them the foundation they need when they get to school to just blossom. We're also continuing our Early Head Start program, which is a program we actually run out of this office with 2 community-based organizations as partners, where we secured federal dollars to provide high-quality early care and education for infants and toddlers whose families live below the poverty line. So we'll continue that program. That is federally funded, although we provide a local match on that. And then we'll continue our local leadership. So we're very involved with several early childhood councils. There are councils in multiple communities in our region that are all working on these same issues around quality, parent support, making sure families have access to the services they need. And so we try to be supportive of their efforts in each of those communities in a variety of ways. And so that leaves us time if folks have questions or want to have discussion. I'd be happy to try to answer them. And I don't know what we want to do about.
I'll alert you if there's a chat question.
Okay. I just don't want to have to repeat everything because that will be very tedious.
Well,
maybe we'll do our best.
I have a question.
Sure.
On on the grid that you showed.
Yep, the chart with the colored bars.
It seems like in 2011, 2012, there was an increase. And why was that? And then why did 2012 go down as opposed to 2011? Because there's less than done for early childhood education. I think before the Obama administration took over. And then I think why sort of poured into it and said, look, we need to do something about this.
Right.
Because the achievement gaps are so great now across the nation.
Yep.
I know there's
right.
a bigger one.
Right.
Compared to the income gap.
So in terms of why it went up and then went down this past year. So I will say that as wonderful as it is to have the support from the president and his wife around early childhood, that support hasn't actually translated into any on-the-ground changes yet. So the fact that there's been a decrease is not showing that something that was added isn't working because nothing's been added yet. Unfortunately, with the sequester, things have been taken away. That's Washington kind of mess going on that affects us locally. I'm sorry, that was editorialized. Sorry. In terms of why things though went up and then went down, I mean, I do think Connecticut has across the state and here, in this region, a lot has been done to make sure more children have access to preschool. Infant toddlers, whole other ballgame. More has been done around that. There have been some innovative home visiting programs that have been funded at the state level, focused on first-time families who are at risk, particularly of child abuse and neglect. And those have been shown to be effective. So, I think there are a variety of things that could explain, maybe why we've seen this incremental improvement. I do not know why it went down. It could be that it was a new crop of teachers. The issue with the test, or I shouldn't call the test, inventory, is that even though the study showed that it was predictive of what happened on the CMTs later, you do still have individual humans doing it. And there were a lot of retirements at the kindergarten level, and a new crop. I'm just guessing at this point. A new crop of teachers came in. It could be a variety of reasons why, and I've not seen an explanation. So I don't know. Measure which part? It's too early to measure what?
Be sure to repeat, because I did get a request.
Oh, okay, yes. So the question is it too early to measure? Which part? So measure which part?
Actually, that's really just based on
Right, there were state numbers, right. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm actually going to go back, because I thought it might be useful. So this shows, this is on this one. Can you get this? So this shows New Haven, the inner ring, outer ring, and then state. And even the state numbers went down, although it wasn't as drastic. And I don't know why. 4 and 5 years, it's starting to be enough to see a trend. What's interesting is that I don't have CMT results up here. That's the Connecticut Mastery Test, which is done starting in 3rd grade. And what that shows in a lot of places, too, is this kind of, there's just not a straight line. And different cohorts of kids, different test questions. I don't know. I don't think folks at the state level completely understand why. It's not a little more, smooth.
I think there's a lot of inconsistency in each town. I've gotten this town of one favor. My son actually did not go to school in one favor because he was in a more structured program where he was get the school readiness age. And as a parent, you recognize certain things in your kid and you want to, propel them as much as you can. When I got ready to put my 4-year-old in kindergarten, the whole premise of only half day or 2.5 hours
right.
was not enough to keep my child engaged, let alone reinforce a lot of the things that they had worked on with him in preschool to get him ready for kindergarten. Right. So I chose to put him in a private school, which was all day, and I watched him excel, from there. So I think a lot of the issues are some of the towns even more so. Thank God for the United Way, but a lot of the towns and the residents have to step up and voice their opinion on the education system as a whole. Because as a parent, realistically, for 2 reasons, half day does not account for 2.5 hours. I don't know where they get their math from, but it does not add up in half a day. But what do you really systemically expect to teach a child in 2.5 hours? But, by the time you get them settled, it's time for them to go. And unfortunately, a lot of programs that they have to take the kids after they've done those 2.5 hours, they're only running and playing things that they could do, but they need more education behind it. So I think there should be a bigger push, because if you're not the type of parent who actually takes an interest in what child is learning, you reinforce. Not everybody can teach, so I commend all the teachers out there. I commend all the parents who come home from a long day's work, sit at the table and try to help reinforce what their children have learned throughout the day. But it's a real, true community effort, down from the state, the local government, the federal government, everybody. Because one of the things too is education is very expensive, and you're right. You know, if you don't have something with a sliding scale, if I'm working just to provide a roof over my head, how do I say, okay, I need $1,500 or $2,000 a month to pay for daycare for my child?
Right.
And there's a difference between preschool and basically somebody babysitting your child until you get off on the job.
Right.
So I think there should be something where there should be more selection, because right now in the town of West Haven, my son attended 2 to 5, but I like the program that they had set up. There was an educational program set up where they taught the kids to recognize words and things like that. But unfortunately, there are a lot of kids who fall through the gap. But how do you fill that gap? Like, what do you do as a taxpayer? You know, I'm doing my part by making sure I pay my property taxes, but those taxes aren't going back into the system or being put towards education. So what do you do?
Right. So just for those who are on the webinar, I'm going to try to just restate that, which is there's a lot of variety among towns in terms of what's offered. West Haven's an example of where there's only half-day kindergarten, which is, I think, not what we would choose, not what you would choose for your child in terms of a learning environment. And what can we do as citizens, as residents of this region, as taxpayers, to make sure there's more emphasis on education? I've tried to. I think that's an issue that the towns are really struggling with because it is really expensive. So I live in Hamden, and I guess it was about 7 or 8 years ago, Hamden made the decision to invest in full-day kindergarten across all of its schools, although they're not actually, no towns actually reimburse that. You're not required to provide full day. And so school districts that do that are making decisions about how to use their money. I happen to think it's a really good decision in terms of putting resources there, but when you're strapped as a town or as a school district and it's not something that's required up against everything else that's required, you can see how they might make that decision. So I think it takes advocacy at the local level, and I think we've got to find our voice as advocates at state level too, because even though I think most early childhood advocates right now would say that we meaning the early childhood community, has done pretty well over the last several years, there's so much more to be done in terms of kids who don't have an opportunity, who fall through the cracks, as you said, who don't have an opportunity because of the cost to be in a high-quality preschool program. So, Maria.
I'm being sensitive to the time. We certainly have time for more questions. For those that feel like they have to run out, we respect that. If you'd like to stay, we're here, and we'd love to further engage with you. Is there any other? Do you have a question from online?
No, I don't see any questions.
Okay. So we can hold the webinar right now if we want to continue.
Okay. All right. So maybe I'll let you handle that. Okay.
Maybe just tell them here.
Yeah. So we're going to sign off on the webinar. It looks like we don't have any other questions. So thank you for joining us, and hope that it was useful. Thank you.